welcome to the Don't Be That Guy webinar series from Bering McKinley. I'm Josh Peterson, the CEO and founder of Bering McKinley. Bering McKinley is a management consulting firm that's been serving MSPs for over 20 years. Our mission is simple. We want to increase your profit, increase your revenue, increase your enterprise value. We do that through our expert operational consulting around service, sales, ownership, technology, everything around that MSP, and our deep tools expertise, especially around the ConnectWise and financial systems. So your accounting package and anything in that ConnectWise stack and a bunch of stuff outside of the stack. So that's what we've been doing for 20 years. We love it. We're going to do this webinar, which is called Managed Services Sucks. And there's, I think, a total of 17 webinars throughout the year, going all the way through the end of, right before Christmas. So the whole point of this series is to really challenge the conventional wisdom of managed services, of owning a small business. And if you get pissed off, if you think we're wrong, let us know, because that's the whole point here, is to get you thinking about these sacred cows or these things that we heard, and really challenge where we heard those things and are they relevant to us, and who told me that thing? Did a vendor teach you about that? What was their motivation for that? Did they have your best interest in mind? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, okay? But we're going to go through all of those titles. We're going to go through each one of those. Today, we're going to get into the Managed Services Sucks. We have a twist on it. In about 15 minutes, you're going to get an email with we call it Document 1. And Document 1 is going to kind of give you the practical side of what Ryan and I are talking about. And you'll kind of see the punchline to the joke of, oh, this is about multiple streams of service revenue and honoring all of those. So you can read that along. You can just enjoy the conversation, whatever you like, but that's something that you can kind of anchor on later. So as we go through this, if you have a question, type it in the box. We'll try to answer it. If you have an observation or tell us we're wrong, type it in the box. We'll try to address it. Again, the whole point here is to challenge the model and get you thinking about some things. So with that said, I got my good buddy Ryan here. Ryan successfully sold his MSP a few years ago. Of the millions of reasons I invited Ryan on here, chief among them was he ran his MSP very contrary to what the industry would call acceptable. He was very hourly based. And that already has made some people's skin crawl as they sit here. We're not advocating that, by the way, but I love Ryan's success in that model. And to this day, I'll put his P&L up against your P&L any fucking day. Okay. Service department gross profit, overall gross profit margin, net profit, cash flow, all of those areas, he crushed it in. Now, again, I'm not advocating you do that. I love managed services, but we're going to talk about why managed services suck. So, Ryan, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate the opportunity. And I want to go on record saying, yes, I built a 20-year-old IT company successfully, was able to sell it. And even though I did it as a break fix, as we get through this conversation, you're going to find out that there's aspects of it that were kind of ran like a managed service. We just didn't call it that, as well as some things were easier, some things were a little bit more difficult. I can't wait to get into the conversations.
Yeah, right on. Now, Ryan, real quick before we start, I see the Chewbacca, I see the Ghostbusters lights flashing, but what is that thing directly behind you? Is that you by chance?
That would be Han Solo, Josh.
Like Star Wars shit?
Like Star Wars shit. And, well, and then you got Chewbacca, right?
Oh, that is Star Wars from like 1970s or something.
For sure, for sure. So, yes, as a nerd, like I'm all about the nerd stuff. And so one winter I got bored and I decided, like, let's just build Han Solo in Carbonite. And then I had to find a Chewie costume to go with him.
Oh, you didn't buy that thing? You somehow made that thing?
I actually built the Han Solo. The Chewbacca I actually purchased, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's crazy. Well, very cool. Well, I was going to be distracted the whole time wondering what
right.
that was.
Well, and I did this on purpose because a lot of times I've had this backdrop for a while. It started during COVID. And it's funny, a lot of times everybody was having Zoom background competitions back in the day. I never had the llama. Okay.
Yes.
I always wanted to have the llama come in, but I never had the llama. But it's funny. You're not the only one that gets distracted. I'll be 15 minutes into a meeting and they're like, yeah, time out, stop. Like, we got to stop the meeting. Like, what's going on back there? So it's
That's
kind of my
awesome.
way to win a Zoom meeting, if that's a
Well,
possibility.
you definitely win on compared to mine for sure. Well, awesome. Well, I want to kind of start with, when we say managed services sucks, I truly mean that to the core of my heart. But there's lots of ways that we can interpret that it sucks. When I say it sucks, I mean the business of managed services sucks. I think MSPs do a great job or best effort to deliver what they sold, figure out how to price it, figure out how to keep themselves out of lawsuits, keep their clients safe and accessible to the network. I think that is a good thing. The business of it over the years, and I have a very awesome, unique vantage point because at this point, anyone wants to check my records, you can. I've worked directly with over 5,000 MSPs directly. I've sat in well over 1,500 MSP offices face to face with owners. So I get this opportunity every week, every day, every month to review financials, to look inside ConnectWises, test theories, hear crazy ideas from clients, hear awesome game changing ideas from clients. So I have this really nice vantage point that allows me to really confidently say, most of us are doing it wrong, not from the delivery, but from the business side. And therein lies kind of one of the differences. When you and I would work together, Ryan, it was always this breath of fresh air because running break fix primarily is easy. You
Mhm.
don't have to do everything perfect on the business side. You do have to do most things very good, but on
Yes.
managed services, to make money, to be sustainable, you have to do things perfectly and with intention.
Yes.
The number one thing that I see out there is I'll talk to a group of people or an individual, and they'll tell me how awesome managed services is, and I'll say, awesome. And they'll go out and say, hourly sucks. Okay, cool. I'm interested in your opinion only if you can show me your agreement gross profit report and you can show me that you've looked at it every month for the last year. If you haven't done that, your opinion is not that interesting to me because you don't have empirical data of why it's awesome. Oftentimes they think it's awesome because I get predictable cash flow. My clients like it because I'm not nickel and diming them. Well, that's awesome. Are you making any money? And can you tell me why you're making money or why you aren't making money? So we'll kind of use that agreement gross profit as the first landing point of having to do things perfect. So number one, we have to understand what AGP is, the formula for it, agreement revenue minus agreement COGS, including the licensing and the labor cost, divided by the agreement revenue. Like that's number one. Do we know that? Probably most everyone on this call does. Next thing I have to do is set a target. What is our target for our managed services agreement? Hey, 65% is the right answer. You tell me you get 70 sustainable, awesome. You tell me you get 50 or 49%. Okay, you know the answer, so that's cool. If you tell me you don't know, if you can't tell me what it was for each of the last 12 months on the entire portfolio on individual agreements, then again, your opinion is just a thought. It's a feeling, it's emotion, and fuck your feelings. This is business. We are here to make money and serve our clients and serve our employees. Okay. So, in order to have a target, you have to have a reason why you're setting that target. We have to have the agreement gross profit report looked at to see if we're achieving the target. But this is where things have to be perfect. Autotask, ConnectWise, they're all, they're pieces of shit. They're awesome. They're whatever you think you are, they are, you're right. In ConnectWise, you have to set that agreement up perfectly to meet that balance of getting the invoice out to the client easily and effortlessly every month and balance that with I can get great reporting. Those, for some reason, are in deep contradiction with each other, and you have to spend a lot of time or money getting that thing perfect. So, great, we got to do that. We got to build the agreement perfect. Now, I've got to do my time entry perfect. I've got to set the right agreement. I got to make sure that if it's covered, it's covered. If it's not covered, it's not covered. Now that means I have to have perfect time entry. All right, cool. That's a big thing to be perfect. I'm in business because people struggle with time entry. But then I've got to have ticketing perfect. I've got to everything has to have a ticket. I can't work on something and then try to remember to make a ticket. My ticket hygiene has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. Ryan, tell me what you're
Now,
thinking.
now, Josh, there's no difference in this between break fix and managed services. What you're talking about, you have to have very similar things on both sides. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. Okay, we're
Yeah.
coming out and we're saying managed services suck. Okay,
Yeah.
so far a lot of what you're talking about. Now, I don't know what your recommendation is, Josh, for
Yeah.
how frequently people should be looking at some of these metrics. One of the things, and maybe I was unique in this, I don't know. I don't know how a lot of other IT companies ran, but I would meet with my dispatcher every morning and go over what's our text billables, what's the tickets look like, and we would be scheduling out 2 to 3 days.
Mhm.
And I know there's a business owner out there right now saying, Ryan, what about those calls that come in? Okay, so we have a couple texts that we don't book up 100%, not 100%. Our goal was 85% billable for the day. Okay.
Right.
And so far, like a lot of what you're saying, I'm not seeing managed services suck. I'm
Okay.
seeing that they're similar.
Yeah. So at this stage, you're exactly right. I'll race forward. Hopefully, I've probably made the point large enough that you got to do things perfect. And you're saying, well,
Absolutely.
you got to do a lot of things perfect and break fix. You're right. Here's the rub. All right. Or here's the punchline. If you're not looking, you get to look at your numbers and break fix every single week, month, whatever your billing cycle is, right?
Yep.
We build 80 hours, we build 300 hours. You get immediate feedback.
Yes.
In managed services, we get so fat and happy with, I have $70,000 a month. I get to bill it out on the first of the month. I'm paid by the fifth. Great. And I know that I'm going to have this much money in the bank. And then it's just cool. Now let's just try to do the best job we can for the next 31 or 29 days.
Right.
You can get the reason it can suck is because of that moment where your money came in. There's no pressure to improve the profitability. There's no external pressure to improve the profitability. It's I got the money, now I'm going to battle through the month, and hopefully I have the same amount of money that I should have at this time of the month. Okay, so that's the rub. And I can kind of evidence this a little bit here, Ryan, with the counterpart to agreement gross profit. That one, most everyone's kind of heard the word, if nothing else, and everyone's pretty smart, so they could figure out the formula if they really thought about it. The second number is that effective hourly rate. And if you're a break fix, effective hourly rate is pretty much exactly what your rack or publish rate is,
Yep.
right? Unless you're writing off a lot of time or doing some weird discounting or whatever it is. But generally speaking, the math should be what was my hourly service revenue for the month, divide it by your rack rate, and that should equal the number of hours you performed in that month. Okay, now it's not exactly always accurate because you could have written some time off or whatever it is, but you get that immediate feedback.
Yep.
If we look at effective hourly rate, where I say, how much agreement revenue did I have for ABC company? Let me subtract out my hard cost, just my licensing cost. Let me divide that by the number of hours we put against that agreement. What is that number? And
Mhm.
the target at BMK is it should be 1.125 times your rack rate. Okay, so if we, grab somebody off the street and said, we're going to do the math for you, we're going to figure out your effective hourly rate on your portfolio. I'll take the bet all day long that you're under your rack rate. All day long, I'll take that bet. You said that you like to bill $150 an hour. When I ran your report, when I went through the math, okay, you're at 135. You're $15 under. You're 97% of your rack rate. That's a fail. That's an automatic fail because logic being the same, If I would have just billed those clients for those hours, I would have gotten my full rack rate and I would have made X% more dollars.
Now, Josh, it's been 2 years since I've sold my IT company, and I
Yeah.
know software improves, ConnectWise improves, dashboards
Mhm.
improve. Now,
Mhm.
I remember this being a little bit of a manual process for me. Like I had
Mhm.
to have my bookkeeper go in. I actually had a report called my Josh report. It was in Excel, okay?
Nice.
And I kind of lived and died monthly by this report showing me whether I was understaffed, overstaffed, how my project percentage was versus my reoccurring. And I did have some level of reoccurring. It just wasn't on labor. Okay.
Right.
And so has things in the past 2 years become more automated? Like, because we all tend to love our tools a little bit. It's if it's painful, I'm not going to look at it. I once had a physical therapist tell me, if you've got to go to the gym and go across town, you're probably not going to go. But if
Right.
you walk into your living room to get your elliptical, you're much likely more to go. I think that these numbers are similar. What do you think about the tools?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think most of the people in this webinar have never heard of me, never heard of Bering McKinley, which is fine. Uh, I'm blacklisted from most conferences now because I'm not a nice I'm a nice guy, but I'm not very nice. But I used to get on stage and issue challenges. I would say Autotask is a piece of shit. They don't have an agreement gross profit report. You can't look at the portfolio. You can go one by one and look at them. And apparently that rubbed people wrong. I would say, Autotask, if you hear this, I'll pay for the time. I'll pay you $1,000. Let us record you proving me wrong. And that you don't like that, I guess. ConnectWise, they're a deep, awesome partner of ours. So I never say they're a piece of shit. If Autotask paid me money, I'd tell them that they're awesome. But tell the world they're awesome. But so the tools, the native reporting in the tools has not gotten any better.
Okay.
And what the good folks at Toma Bravo have done is say, and probably ConnectWise leadership as well, is, hey, we're never going to fix these reports. So we're really going to endorse MSP bots, Cognition 360, Roost, all these phenomenal tools. So if you want, so to your question, if you want those reports to be awesome and easy to, yeah, access and know that you can put your spin on them, you got to use one of those tools. Bright
Okay.
Gauge, fine, all of them. So now you got to buy a third party tool. Now,
Right.
I only through repetition, having done it forever, I can make the ConnectWise one work. But you're right, it's manual. Like literally, it's doing the effective rate calculation at the bottom of it.
Right. And we got it to a point. Now, I want to let the audience know I didn't get this in the first 5 years of business. Okay. I didn't get this in the first 7 years of business. It probably took me 10 years of running my MSP to really get our report dialed in. And it wasn't big, it wasn't fancy. It was actually amazingly basic,
Yeah.
but I knew my metrics. I knew my targets and being able to drive towards them. And then we found out things called levers. Like if I push this lever, then it moves that number. That probably took another 5 years to figure out.
Well,
One of the things
that's it.
that I found working with Josh is he helped me towards those because I might have never actually figured some of those out.
Right. Right. Well, that's the thing. I think, you and I started working together a long time ago when there wasn't as much accessibility to information and knowledge.
For sure.
I had one competitor, 8 years ago. Now I've got like seven, and they're all awesome. And we're publishing free information. We're doing stuff like this. So now, if you're an MSP owner today and you're not paying attention or curious about the numbers and willing to put a little bit of discipline into, um, tweaking those reports and getting them right, man, that's a shame because the information's out there. You can find out what it is. I would say just a little bit of curiosity goes a long way, and that was something that you're definitely blessed with. Is you were curious to say, what's the formula? What's the recipe?
Right.
And if I put too much salt in, if I put too much of this other thing, what happens? There's your levers, and
And
that's it.
for sure. And I want to go to like management of the company also. Once you understand your levers, then it helps you come up with your bonus incentive programs. Okay. Josh, the most valuable thing, I think one of the things I did was $100 a month per technician. Okay, anybody out there can most likely afford $100 a month per technician. Okay,
Yeah.
and that was if they hit their billable rate. Okay, you would be amazed at how much that motivated them, how much that it paid for itself in the first month.
Well, let's do this then, because that's going to lead us directly into um, incentivizing a few things that we do need to incentivize. So when we think about that hourly, because clearly I'm beginning to start to make the case for that hourly revenue, um, there's this shift that has to happen. So let's kind of start from the top on this.
Yes.
If we look at an IT solution provider, an MSP, if they're thinking about their revenue buckets in the way that I do, for example, I'm thinking there's three buckets of revenue. There's that product revenue, those hard things that we sell and try to get 20% margin on. We sell resold licenses, cloud services, whether it's your Datto or your Office 365, those carry a different margin. So now we have two buckets I need to feed. But then the third one, the big one, is that service bucket. Okay. Now, in that service bucket revenue, we have to have three sub buckets. We got to have recurring, project, and hourly. We have to have those three buckets. We, as owners, we have to know exactly how much came in from each one of them. Now, the traditional thinking would be, oh, I want most of that to be in recurring revenue. I want 90% to be in my managed services, the 10% from project or hourly. I don't even care about that. I'm here for the recurring. Okay, cool. Where I want to shift the thinking is to say, you get to say you want mostly recurring revenue to yourself only when you can tell yourself your AGP and your effective hourly rate on that recurring consistently. Okay, so you can say if you come to me and you tell me, Josh, for the last 12 months I've been hitting 62 to 67% gross profit on my managed service agreements. My effective hourly rate is 1.5 times my rack rate. I'm going to say, great, do that. That's awesome. You're killing it. I got nothing to say to you. I haven't met that person very often. Like I think the names or the faces of the people who I've met doing that are running through my brain, and it's not a long list. Okay, so that's likely not most people we're going to meet. So with that said, I want people to reshift their thinking to say, well, what if I hear this thing where Barry McKinley or Josh says maybe 60% recurring revenue, 20% hourly, 20% projects. That might sound crazy as you first hear it, but what I'm not telling anyone to do is have less dollars of recurring revenue. Keep getting as many dollars as you can. I want you to have that. Just make sure it's profitable. But let's not ignore that additional revenue of project and hourly. Okay? Because what happens is if we look at your AGP and we say, boy, you're sub 50%. You're 48%. I can tell you, I see lots of contracts that are at 30%. We have to ask ourselves why. Why is it so not profitable? And your first level answer is going to be, I priced it wrong. Yeah, that client, they really beat me up on price, or that's a pain in the ass client. The client sucks. And we're going to kind of put all of it on the client. And okay, fair, you're probably right. But there's that component that says, am I delivering it right? Am I putting the right cost technician to the right task at that client? Or am I just saying, Joe, my $90,000 engineer, that's your client. You do everything. They love you. You know them best. Well, shit, now I've got a really high cost on that agreement. Did I price it in a way that supports just Joe, my very expensive engineer working on it? Probably not. So I've got this kind of dispatch error or this thesis error on how to serve a client. But more importantly, is if we start looking at how we're delivering the service, then we start saying, well, does my dispatcher know the moves, adds, and change, the excluded, the out of scope on that agreement? can they recite it to me? If I go ask them to tell me about what would trigger an out of scope event, could they tell me? Because that's what I,
Josh, every dispatcher knows these things, right?
yeah,
They're
right,
just
right, right.
born with this, right?
That's right.
So,
That's
and
right.
this is why, because they're born with this, I'm joking, I'm being
Yeah, of
facetious.
course.
Okay. Um, one of the things I found, it took me 6 months, 6 to 8 months of meeting with my dispatcher on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Every morning, we would go over who's scheduled for what clients, what, and me teaching them exactly what you're talking about to
yeah,
the business owners. I would also educate my dispatchers on, because you're 100% right. This is a huge factor in profitability.
for sure. So when that dispatcher is really informed to say this is the move, add and change, this is out of scope, because they're who I want owning this, but do my technicians know that it's out of scope? Have I trained them on how to say, hey, out of scope, let me tell dispatch, let me tell service manager, let me tell the owner, so that we can use that pressure release valve of hourly out of scope work.
Mhm,
I think what I've observed is most agreements that I see are underperforming because we're over delivering.
mhm,
And that takes a lot of work to kind of unwind that clock or recalibrate that to say, why did we price this agreement in this manner? We priced it in this manner because we know it's not all you can eat. And we're trying to strike that balance to say, if you change offices, if you're moving computers, if you're adding a computer, I'm going to have to charge you. But if we really look at our tickets and say, have we been executing on that? How have we been doing that? Well, your only way you're really going to know is what's my hourly revenue from that base of managed services clients every month. So if I'll break that hourly into a separate bucket on my P&L, I can start comparing to say, wow, that's $1,000 a month client, $12,000 a year recurring, and they spent $1,200 of hourly with us. That's a 10% pull through rate or drag along rate. And you don't have to do anything fancy. Just look at your P&L and say, how much recurring revenue did I have last year? How much hourly did I have? Did most of that hourly come from my existing clients? What's the pull through rate? What's the ratio there? And don't change anything. Just put some intention towards saying, well, if with no intention and attention, we've been getting 10% pull through, what happens if I start training my team even better and give them the authority to call those things out? Does that bump to 12%, 15%, 20%? That's that first step to saying, use that pressure release valve. If you had an extra 20, 30, 50 hours a month of hourly on top of your recurring, what's that? Another 7,500, $10,000 in some cases of service revenue. That's going to do what? It's going to boost your service department gross profit. It's going to boost your overall gross profit. And it's going to obviously, hopefully, carry all the way through to your net profit. And I don't know anyone on this call, but I see plenty of P&Ls that are 1%, 3%, 4% net profit. Hey, that $10,000 a month can make a real difference. Okay, so that's, yeah, get it, knowing that your dispatcher and your techs don't organically know these things. We have to train them. That path to saying, I want to honor hourly revenue and see it for the valuable component that it is, that's it. Right? That's the name of the game. Get yourself profitable by charging for the things you should be charging that's in the contract that you priced it based off of. Is that checking out, Ryan?
absolutely, Josh. And when you go to pricing contracts, this is one thing that I think that is really tough to get perfect in a managed service environment. It's easy for me to come in as a break fix shop and say, a new client, let's take that for example, and say, hey, I'm going to come in. I know I need to replace your firewall. I know I need to replace your switches and your servers that age. Like, we're going to replace that. Your desktops are fine for another year or so. Let's plan that out. Okay. So now I've got my hardware sales. I'm filling my buckets, right? it's easy to come in and say like, okay, so server so many hours, blah blah blah, and maybe some of these companies are actually doing these as projects. That's great. Drop that into that project bucket, right?
That's right.
Um, what I found over time is that we ended up charging about the same amount
Hmm.
in that hourly break fix model versus what we would in a reoccurring revenue model. But I was just more profitable doing it this way because one of the things that happened was we trained the clients a little bit more. Okay,
Mm.
and this is a tough thing to do when they go ring ring like, hey, if I have an all you can eat buffet as a managed service client, I'm going to call you for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Versus when I'm more thinking on that hourly, like, is this going to be a move out or change or something like that? I'm going to think twice before I pick up that phone. And your techs are going to want to help them no matter what. And so it's our job to set up from a sales standpoint these things right from the get go.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and that brings up so many good points, and one of them is around the pricing of the managed services. One of them is the selling of the managed services. Are there alternate models out here? And I'll kind of address the selling first. So if you feel like you've priced your managed services correctly, well, you're not going to know until you start delivering, of course. But I think managed services is really a challenge to sell um, to small business. Your clients that are 5 million and less, 4 million and less. I think it's challenging. I think it's evidenced by slow growth of our industry, managed service provider by managed service provider. It's hard to sell. It's hard to get salespeople to understand it. It's hard for salespeople to get clients to meet with them. There's no hook because, like it or not, it begins to appear like a commodity to your prospects. And it takes a pretty good salesperson, of which owners are always pretty awesome salespeople, but we don't have salespeople in our industry largely. We have owner-led sales with the occasional test and see if we can get a salesperson in there. But training them and getting them to go through the grind is really tough. Um, so there are other models that can serve both purposes. And one of them is, and this is my favorite one, if I had to start an MSP tomorrow, this is the model I would use, which is the managed services plus block, or managed services plus hourly, where it's, hey, what are the costs of my tools to remotely monitor and manage that client? And let me put, 200 or 300% margin on those. That's the base fee for my managed services offering. Everything that we do for you, we're going to charge by the hour. So now, as a salesperson, you get to come in and say, hey, uh, you're paying $3,000 a month. You're expecting me to tell you it's $3,000, $3,500 a month. Here's the deal, it's $700 a month. You're
Mhm.
just going to pay for what you eat.
Yep.
And I'm going to explain the difference between service and support. I'm going to really help them understand that you're going to have months where you're paying well over $3,500 a month because you're doing a project or you had some craziness, but you might have a series of months that you're paying us the flat $600 or $700. Eating what you're paying for what you eat is how this MSP does it. Now, I've got a half a dozen examples in our kind of portfolio of Bering McKinley right now. Our wildest, most profitable client is $13 million, single owner, been in business for about 25 years, just serves dental, which is as tough as it gets, in my opinion. Uh,
Nice.
he kills it. I think he usually, I think if I remember last year, it was 22% net profit before the jet and 16 after the jet. So he flies his own jet. So all of those costs go in there, but operationally, 22%. So that model serves him really well. It doesn't have to serve anyone else, but again, getting that creative thinking of, are there different ways to do this? Now, one of the biggest objections, and this client, the dental guy, he'll tell you too, you got to get some really thick skin. Your people have to be trained really well because people are going to call and complain about invoices.
Yep.
Yeah, we thought it took, you were here for 2 hours, you charged for 3 hours. Now, the volume is very low, but every time you get that call, it just takes a little bit of your soul. It takes a little bit of your energy. It makes you question things. I think you've got to weather that storm and say, why is this client calling? They're not calling because of this exact moment. They're calling because they're afraid. They're afraid that they're being taken advantage of. They're calling because they don't trust you. They're calling because something is telling them that this isn't right, which means they just didn't understand and they may not have been the best fit for us. So instead of the service manager or the technician or the owner taking that on the chin, they have to develop their conviction towards that model to say, we did the work right. We charged you fairly for it. Where did I, the business, fail you, the client, in letting you know to expect this? Okay. So I think it sucks when you get those calls, but you got to power through that and now you can win. But I think that's the biggest fear for people when you talk about sending an hourly invoice to a client is what if they complain?
For sure.
Yeah. And you
And
you probably had to deal with that, or how did you get through that? You sent out millions of dollars of hourly invoices.
right. And we actually put our tech notes on the invoice, which is a huge gamble,
Huge
which means,
gamble.
yes, we actually would review our text notes to make sure that they didn't say silly things that may not be client facing. I bet there's more than one person out there laughing and going like, oh my goodness, right now, when they're like, you actually sent your client your tech notes. And the answer was, yes, we did. It provided a corporate culture of accountability, both for the techs, for the people reviewing the time, and it built the value in the time entry. And
Yeah.
so then when we would go back and they would be like, well, you were on site for 4 hours, you billed us for 4 hours, we say you were here for 3 or whatever. We have our actual clock in, clock out time from the client's place, as well as the notes. And after a while, you get good at it enough to know, like, okay, so we had to rebuild their entire server or something like this from backups we did in 4 hours. That's a damn good value for the client. Okay.
Yeah.
Or you catch it ahead of time and be like, okay, so why did we spend 18 hours rebuilding a Windows 7 box? Like,
Right.
we need to catch those things ahead of time. As you educate the team, it just builds a better team, is what I have found.
Dude, that's so perfect. There's another case of the when we're working an hourly model, we get immediate feedback.
Yes.
When I look at a lot of the managed services folks we work with, they don't care about the time entry as much because they're not looking at their AGP. So the amount of time is just the amount of time, which
Right.
then they get into this false kind of story of, oh, I have really great utilization. We're really busy. If I was looking at my AGP, I would see that it really sucks. So now we're not in alignment. But no one's caring about the time entry. But when you're sending out that hourly bill, every month you're seeing, wow, we're sending them $7,000. That's a lot more than normal. I'm going to look at that with more scrutiny because I know a client will care about that bill. And did we do the right thing?
And it also helps you, Josh, from a sales standpoint, because then what you can do is you can go look and say, like, okay, this bill's been 7 grand for 3 months. That shouldn't be right. They should be more around 4 grand. What's going on? Oh, well, we've had to fix their server 4 times, okay, over that
Yeah.
period of time. Why aren't we just replacing the server? Off to sales it goes.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that just that immediate feedback, and that with that immediate feedback of, hey, the we need to do some root cause analysis, we need to replace that thing. It also gives you, and I've met your dispatchers, throughout the years, uh, those are the best dispatchers I've ever met because they knew I've got to do this right, or else we're not going to get enough billable, or we're going to get in scenarios where the client is upset with the bill. So I need to have, as the dispatcher, mechanisms to control how long people are on things. That kid's been there for 4 hours now. He must be spinning out of control. Let me figure out how to recalibrate that. That feedback is only as good as what you do with it. And that's something that we miss in that managed services world is we don't pay attention to the feedback. So we don't necessarily improve our time entry standard or our ticketing hygiene or our dispatch process. We just kind of fight through because, again, there's that 70 grand a month coming in.
You know something though, Josh, not everybody wants a jet. I guess apparently a lot of people are just okay leaving a ton of money, just piles of money on the table.
That's funny you say that, with new clients. And I'm an asshole. Our consultants are beautiful, wonderful, empathetic, awesome people. So this is not as harsh as it sounds. Early on with every client, we go through the exercise of saying, here's your agreement gross profit report. Here's your effective hourly rate. If we multiplied your hours put against those agreements times your standard rate, this is how much you would have earned compared to your managed services. And that's a really big number for a lot of people. A lot of money is quote unquote left on the table. Owners get that's kind of a big moment for owners. And it's not the moment of, great, I'm going to hourly. That's not what we're compelling them to do. But what it does is say, that's a big enough moment that I am going to reevaluate my pricing. I'm going to reevaluate how we deliver services. I'm going to reevaluate, my revenue recovery on this. But sometimes we just got to get smacked in the face to say, we're leaving jet money on the table because that's big. So it is quite a journey, which is exactly why we do this type of conversation, Ryan. It's helping people challenge how they're thinking about that managed services portfolio, and are we getting maximum value? And if it's okay to be, 7% net profit and okay not to know your AGP, this conversation ain't going to help. But if they're kind of sitting there thinking, how can I do better? Well, these are your steps, is to challenge it. I wanted to hop on to, I'm looking at document one here. I know you don't have a copy of it. But I just want to make sure we've covered all of these talking points. And if anyone has any questions or observations, go ahead and fire away. By the way, you don't have to, but if you have a thought, please share it. The billing and review phase, the pull through. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the pull through. Just to again reinforce, I'm not trying to drive people into an hourly business model. I'm trying to really encourage people to look at the hourly as a valuable revenue stream. And that first step is to just observe, what's my pull through rate right now? If you don't have project and hourly broken out, maybe it's this one big bucket on your P&L, just take that number and say, well, this is primarily from my managed services clients, this project and hourly. So if I have $100,000 of a month of recurring revenue, and I've got $30,000 of project and hourly in that month, that's a 30% pull through. And look at it for the full year and say, okay, well, the pull through overall was 27%. Again, without intention or attention, that's just where it was. So now if we put a little bit of intention and attention towards it, could that boost to 30% annually or 35%? Some of our clients actually go through and they look at pull through on hourly, pull through on project, pull through on hourly and project. And some of them, and it's usually the really big ones, the 50, $60 million folks, they will say, I'm going to add product in there as well. And their pull through rates, they're looking for like a 1.2. So if they have $100,000 of recurring revenue, they're looking for like $102,000 of hourly project and product, which blows my mind. But identifying what your pull through rate and starting to measure it and starting to set targets, you'll see this improvement, which means that we got to go train those dispatchers, train the technicians, make sure that we are all on the same page of what's a move out or change, what's out of scope. And then we get into that project component, Ryan.
Oh.
Managed services sucks a lot of times because we don't have good account management.
Mm.
And without good account management, we can't do good budgeting for our clients. If we don't do good budgeting for our clients, we miss out on refresh cycles. If we don't do that, our clients don't build that trust with us when we come and try to get 30% or 25% margin on a desktop or a laptop. It
Right.
all cycles through. So when we look at that project revenue to be studied tells us two things. It tells us how well we're doing at getting new clients,
Mhm.
because Any good new managed services client starts with a project to remediate or onboard. It also tells us how good we're doing at selling to our existing clients. Hey, they need things. They need improvement. They need enhanced security. They need better machines. And if we're not having that conversation about refresh cycle, man, we're in trouble. How were you guys on the project side, Ryan?
So we were very heavy on our project side, so much so that I had a specific project manager. So to give people an idea, we were about a $2.1 million MSP from a size standpoint. And I think that's kind of borderline revenue wise, whether you have a dedicated project manager or if you're still running stuff through dispatch. We determined to have a project manager, and we found that when we got really good at our projects and we were flat rating them, that's when we really started making money. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I even came up with incentive programs for the techs as far as like, because you give a tech a 80-hour budget, guess how long the project's going to take?
80
8
hours.
hours. Okay. And so we started doing things inside ConnectWise where we would only show them that they had 60. Okay. And then, but it also ties back to your billing. If you're doing a project on an hourly basis and you know you're going to run over, don't call them once you've already ran over. Don't call them the day you're running over. You have to have that project manager ahead of that track saying like, okay, we have 20 hours budgeted for this project. We're at 15, but we're only 75% of the way through the work or 50% of the way through the work. Okay. We're going to need a little bit extra. Having those conversations that way, you're not kicking that can down the road to billing and having even a tougher conversation.
That's right. That's right. And that's as I think of all the things we've talked about our PSA having to be configured really well, thinking about our chart of accounts and how that has to read, the calculations around AGP and EHR, talking about pricing it right, talking about how we need to bring in project managers and account managers, talking about having awesome dispatchers. If at the end of all of that, in a quick 45 minutes, you don't think managed services sucks, then you are an absolute glutton for punishment. This is a tough business. Even though this is what we talk about from the business side every single day, just talking about it with you for 45 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, I wasn't wrong. This is a really hard business. This kind of sucks. Maybe I'll just go sell Love Like a Nerd t-shirts.
There you go.
It's a lot of work to get, 8% net profit for. And it's to me it's the reward of being a managed services provider a lot of times comes from I like helping clients, and
Yeah.
that's a great feeling. Or I love, helping employees achieve something better in their lives. That's a great reward. But bottom line, you end up in the state-sponsored nursing home because you ran at 7% net profit for most of your career. Well, hopefully the helping people was definitely worth it, because that can be the reward. It's going to suck to do all the things you do for such a small return. So always excited for people to find that one or two things that they're challenged to say, I'm going to start looking at this. I'm going to start pricing, look at my pricing, look at my process. Just because it sucks doesn't mean that it has to suck.
Right. Well, and it's not like you're doing this for your health. Okay.
Right,
I mean,
right,
you're answering client calls during date night and all the things. So
right.
like make it worth your while. And there, I talk about inches and I talk about miles. Okay.
Mhm.
Some companies have miles to go, and you can chop off some of those miles and make a lot of progress really quickly. And then after you refine your processes, your company, your team, then you're just trying to gain those inches, and those inches tend to be a lot more effort put in for a little less gain. So congratulate yourself right now if you have miles to go. That's great. That means you have so many low hanging fruit. You could be improving your bottom line so much quicker.
That's it. That's so right, Ryan. And it's, being a management consultant in the industry for so long, um, it's kind of funny because You don't stick around in this industry for 20 years if you suck. All right, if you don't get people results. And we've never had that problem because the first 6 to 12 months of an engagement with somebody, they're thrilled with Bering McKinley. What the party trick is, well, we just did the easy stuff.
Right.
And the easy stuff gets such a quick and sustainable return that going into year 2 or 3 with a client is much harder because to your analogy, one of our consultants said this a few years ago, and I love it. He said, in the beginning, we just get to turn the big knobs. Those are
Yes.
easy to turn. To get to 8, 10, 12% if you're much lower, it's all big knobs.
Hmm.
Okay? Just stop doing the dumb shit you've been doing.
Yeah.
When we get down the rack, now it's the little knobs. And those, it's like I have to turn 4 of these little knobs to get an extra 2 points of profit. Do you have the energy for that? Do you have the sustained enthusiasm for it? Are you just so thrilled you got to 11% and you were at 3%? Is there enough motivation to keep tweaking those little knobs? And then you fuck something up and you got to go back to the big knob again. And
Yeah.
it's a dance for sure. But no, you're exactly right.
So as we come up on the kind of the end of our webinar, I think one of the things that's in every IT company owner's mind is selling at some
Mm,
point, exit.
mhm.
Okay. And if you don't want to do these metrics for your team, for yourself, you're good enough with I'm doing good for people and helping my community. Okay. These are all the same things that you're going to have to do when you go to exit, except you're going to have a condensed time frame to do it. And it's going to be a lot harder. So make your money now and do the things now while you still run the company. And that's going to make you also, if you want, a better acquisition target.
Well, that's exactly right, Ryan. And there's really two parts I think of when you say that. Number one is, okay, cool. Barry McKinley helps you grow your revenue, grow your profit, grow your enterprise value. How does so enhancing with the hourly revenue component to your service revenue? Yeah, you're going to get more revenue. Yep, you're going to get more profit. Does it hurt or help your enterprise value? And I'll say this will not have, having an extra $100,000 of hourly revenue. It's not going to help your enterprise value when you sell. The buyers are going to say, "Yo, that's awesome. You have $300,000 total of hourly. That makes us happy. We're going to give you an even higher multiplier." That's not going to happen.
No.
It'll come through your valuation through, being higher revenue and higher profit, but it's not gonna, no one's gonna come to you and say, I'm stoked that you have all that hourly revenue. But it's not gonna hurt you either. You, Ryan, let's talk about you for a second on the second piece, which is that being ready to sell. So
Mhm.
getting those reports, getting your PSA tightened up, understanding how you price things, showing good gross profit. Um, the more ready you are when that sell date comes, the better you're going to be. But I'm going to use you as an example.
Absolutely.
You did not look down at the calendar and say, I'm going to sell 1 year from now. And then 1 year from now, you sold. What I remember is you're doing business, you're kicking butt, you're going through the battle, you're going through the grind. And then I called you and said, hey, here's some people you should meet. And then, some days, weeks later, they said, we want to buy you. And then you were in the fight. So the minute somebody says, we might want to buy you, the game is over.
Pretty much.
Now it's not, well, okay, cool. I'm actually interested in selling. Let me go fix a bunch of shit and get back to you.
You
It
don't have
was
time.
whatever the state of your infrastructure was on that date,
Yep.
it's game over. You're interested in selling. Now all you can do is spin it and have the conversations and hope that they see what you see. Is it like it surprised you?
It super surprised me because I had never really planned on selling. I
Yeah.
mean, I was building this for me and I wanted to build the best IT company that I could build. And I saw the value in watching the metrics and everything. And the other thing is that, okay, say they offer you X with a such and such multiplier when you go through the sale process. that may not be the number that comes out the other side once they look at your books,
Yeah.
once they look at all of your stuff. And they literally asked me for the same data about 100 different ways. Okay.
Yes.
So there was no hiding anything inside those numbers. And if I wasn't so dialed with these numbers, I know we would have gotten a lot less for the company.
There you go. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And hopefully that's something that we all take away, because not everyone sits around thinking, I'm going to sell. I look forward to selling, or I'm going to sell on this date. Almost everything that comes to my mind when we've, watched somebody sell is, we didn't even know you were trying to sell. You
Yeah.
weren't. Something just popped up. So with that, Ryan, thanks for taking the time here today.
Sure.
Our next webinar is on the 15th of May. It's called "You Suck at Managed Services," and maybe you'll show up, everyone, and enjoy that as well. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, shoot us a message. Happy to chat with you. Give us a call, hit a scheduling link, whatever you like. But hopefully this is a good use of your time, gang who joined us, and hopefully we'll see you on the 15th.